All right, each of y'all have to bring the top 3 fights of all time. They could be conflicts, beefs, etc., etc. Go for it.
Do you want to start?
I'll start. So yeah, we're doing this in the classic fashion, the Hecker Lowery Coley podcast that we've been doing it, where we can kind of take this however we want. But the top 3 fights in history. So my 3 are all different, like, categories of fights. But my first one is the most literal of my 3 fights, and I chose June 28th, 1997, in the boxing ring, Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield. And Mike Tyson did a fight the day after Thanksgiving this year, and I was with my cousins, and we brought back up this fight and watched it on YouTube. And all right, so like I got a quick little rundown of it. So Holyfield won the first 2 rounds, and Tyson had been complaining about headbutting, and the 3rd round came out, and Mike Tyson came out without his mouth guard, which was a big deal. Like, you want to wear your mouth guard, and people didn't know what was going on there. So he came out without his mouthpiece. And then during a little grapple, the famous moment, Mike Tyson bit his right ear and spit it out on the ground. Like,
big chunk.
And the reason why this is such a cool thing was, like, no one knew what the hell is this allowed? Like, what? Like, it wasn't something that anyone expected. So what happened was the referee stopped it, and he's like, you bit him? Like, he was flabbergasted. The referee was absolutely
bit him. He like bit a chunk of his ear off.
Bit a chunk of his ear off, like, spit it out. Yeah, it was 1 inch of cartilage that he spit onto the floor. And the funniest part was the referee. His name was I have his name here, Mills Lane. He was just so confused. He was flabbergasted. So he was about to disqualify him, and he pushed him back to the sidelines or the corners, and then Evander Holyfield was like, I'm fine, it's all good. And he didn't know if it was an accident or not. So he's like, all right, I'm going to deduct 2 points for that, but let's go again. So, like, he started it back up. So he was really confused, and that was the funny part. And then they started fighting again, and then Tyson bit his left ear. And right away, Mills Lane stopped the fight and disqualified him. Yeah. And the coolest part about it, and I didn't really know this, I always knew the allure and the story of the bite in his ear during this fight, but the coolest part to watch it live again on YouTube recently, and I suggest for people to go watch the fight on YouTube, is the mass hysteria and confusion that was going on. This fight generated $100 million in revenue. It was a pay-per-view, biggest fight, huge crowd in Las Vegas, and all of a sudden it was just over because of these bites in the ear, which was something that was never discussed or thought of or heard of. And it was the referee, like, everyone ran into the ring, then everyone, like, ran out of the ring. It was just mass hysteria. And about 10 minutes later, the referee did an explanation. He's like, yeah, like, Mike Tyson bit him, and, like, then he bit him again. And so Holyfield won the fight, and as a result, Tyson, he got his license revoked in the state of Nevada and had a $3 million fine plus legal costs. Later, Tyson and Holyfield, they did like a little podcast together and made up. And I think it was also Holyfield went on Oprah. But if you ever ask me, I didn't even know about boxing, care about boxing, but I just remember how big of a story this was.
Crazy. Mm-hmm.
And the bite in the ear will live on in legacy. This was before Mike Tyson had the face tattoo. And boxing is actually kind of coming back in popularity a little bit.
Yeah, you know why? Because of like the
Logan Paul and Jake Paul. And dude, I can't believe how legitimate that they are.
What do you mean?
Like,
they're just
good
like
at
a
boxing.
Sideshow. Yeah,
but they're good at boxing. They train.
I mean, yeah, but they're good compared to us. If they fought like, what's his name? One of them wants to fight Conor McGregor.
Jake Paul knocked the shit out of Nate Robinson in one punch.
Nate Robinson's a tiny little
player. So that's Jake Paul. So Logan Paul is fighting Floyd Mayweather.
Right.
It's booked. It's happening.
I know. So I mean, it's a huge money grab.
It's
for both of them. It's like, smart, but
they're not. But it's not just a sideshow. Like he's training. Like they're a lot better boxers than I thought.
He could beat Floyd Mayweather?
So the thing is, he's a lot bigger. He's 6'2", like 200, and
out
I think
of 100.
Mayweather.
What's the
Floyd
percentage?
Mayweather is like the best boxer of all time.
Yeah.
The thing is that he's Floyd is such a defensive boxer. So like
he's kind of like a boring type boxer compared to Mike
Right.
Tyson with a heavy punch.
So he's not like he may not knock out Logan Paul, but he's not going to win. I don't think.
Right.
I mean, I don't know much about boxing, so it's hard to say that. But I mean, good for them. They're getting their bag, but it is like it is just like an entertainment thing. It's not like he's not challenging for like a belt. Neither of them is going to be like a world champion.
But legacy is at stake. Like if he actually beats Floyd Mayweather, that'd be the most embarrassing.
But I even heard Joe Rogan talking about it, and I am surprised because I agree. The Paul brothers are amazing at gathering attention, videos, subscription. Jake Paul actually has a few good rap songs, but their legitimacy as far as the training and the boxing, fighters, I was impressed. I had no idea. I thought it might just be like goofy dudes like messing around. Like they are taking the boxing element very seriously.
I think they were wrestlers, aren't they? Because I didn't know who this guy was until the last whatever the last fight was with Nate Robinson. Then I like looked into it more. I think we talked about it on the podcast, and like they were both like college wrestlers, so they come from like a combat sports background. Right. They're both big dudes. Like they would beat the shit out of me for sure. I just don't know. I can't see them challenging any like professional boxer. Maybe I'm wrong. Again, I don't know much about boxing. The thing about boxing is like MMA is so much more entertaining because it's so much dirtier. Like part of what we loved about the fight you just mentioned, I had it number 2 on my list was it was like shocking. Would you consider that a cheap shot?
Yeah.
I don't.
I mean,
I consider a cheap shot like a punch to the nuts, or like a real like
boxing.
It's just so like
the thing about boxing and like Conor McGregor and Floyd Mayweather. I watched that and I had a good time watching that. And I'm not a big fight guy, but if it was MMA, Conor would destroy him. Like boxing is like kind of a cop out as far as people who don't know and they just think it's fighting. Like there are very set rules. So like it is. It's technically a cheap shot. You can't bite. Like if you kick, that's a cheap shot.
Technically, sure, but I think of like a cheap shot like. Punching somebody from behind or headbutting, like there's something about biting a man's ear off where it's like a cheap shot is like a chicken shit move, like a pussy does it. You bite my ear off, like, all right, dude, like you win. You know what I mean?
The thing is, Mike Tyson got away with it. Mm-hmm. Like if it was a head game, if it was something that nobody expected, which nobody did, and he had it as a plan to psychologically get into his head, it worked. The ref was super confused. He docked him 2 points. But then he bit his other ear. Like, he should have just bit the first ear, psychologically messed him up. Like, Holyfield won the first 2 rounds, and this was the round 3. And he came out without his mouth guard. So, was he planning on doing the biting?
He was Mike. I mean, not that he's the most rational, reasonable guy now, but Mike Tyson was like crazy. Yeah. You ever see the interview of him after one fight where he's like, "Oh, Mike, you look like you were like slowing down towards the end. Like, what happened there?" He's like, "I broke my back." He just stares at he's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, my back is broken." And I came out and it's like, I don't know what to think about this guy, but he's absolutely entertaining, electric.
He has that element of, and I don't think it's like strategy at all. He's just a wild dude, and he's
crazy guy,
and so he's obviously had all his past. But then he went to the phase in his life where he started a weed farm, and he got super chill and super meta and relaxed and meditation, and smoking weed and loving everybody, and then. Recently, he got back in shape and fighting again. Like
I don't know if he needed money, but it seems like they did it for the money. And did you watch that? Roy
I
Jones
didn't. I like YouTube a couple minutes. I heard it was a big dud.
It was. I mean, I don't know if it was a dud. It was like an exhibition. They weren't trying to knock each other out.
Right.
But it was weird. I mean,
they're trying to get paid and leave.
But the thing the average fan doesn't understand about boxing, which I just am starting to kind of understand, is like the training is so like intense, and you could see Mike Tyson's body. Like, like you know how hard it is to get in that fucking shape, and Mike Tyson, like a couple weeks pass or months, and he just is a new man. Like the fight is only 10 minutes or 10 rounds, however long.
So tiring though.
But the formation of his body in that time period is just like, damn, anyone that can do that is fierce and intense, and you got to give them credit for the training that goes into that one fight. I mean, the NBA, like LeBron lost the first game last night of the season. He's gonna be fine. He's gonna get into. They're gonna get into shape. They're gonna, go on with the season. Like boxing, like you do all that for just this moment. And boxing used to be one of the most popular sports. I never got that into it, but during our sports life, boxing has been on the down. And there's a certain element of people who love MMA, but
MMA has overtaken boxing big time.
Yeah.
It's so much more like accessible. I don't know. It's so much more entertaining. I think.
I don't really like watching.
I like watching
much.
boxing. No, what are you like? This isn't a cheap shot or an insult?
I don't know.
Do you
I just
not like the gruesomeness of seeing somebody get knocked out? Because I kind of get that.
Yeah, kind of.
I like it myself, but like you get like scared watching somebody's head snap back.
Kind of. Like I said it before, I consider myself a tough guy, and I am.
Mm-hmm.
But like, I don't like the idea of. I've been in a few fights. Me and you got a couple fights in college, and like every time I get into a fight, like even with my brother or something, like I'll punch as hard as I can, but I'll punch like right around the shoulder. Like I'm kind of scared to punch someone in the face because I don't know. I'm strong and like. I don't want to, because just like we talked about last podcast,
really
stepping on a cockroach or stepping on a mouse, like I don't really want to feel that like bone on bone, like shattering. Like, and yes, like I was always a great athlete. Baseball, I was a little scared of that ball, like that, and that was one of my flaws as a baseball player. Great fielder, great base runner, decent hitter, but like just imagine that ball like 70 miles per hour hitting you in the cheek. I don't love crunchy bone stuff, and I think that might be one of the reasons I've never been like drawn to fighting as a sport, but I'm open-minded and I love the hype up and the excitement leading towards it and the shit talking, and I respect the hell out of the training and everything that goes into it. So if it's making a little comeback with these YouTube people, like, dude, celebrity fighting, that's cool. Yeah. And I'm into it. So Tyson, love it. Holyfield, that's my fight.
That was a good one. Yeah, I had that. That was a no-brainer.
You got a backup? Do you get that steal it from you?
I got plenty. No, I have. I knew that a few of these I'm sure you'll have on your list too.
Okay.
All right, so I'll go with the Malice at the Palace.
Oh,
remember this?
Yeah,
2004
dude.
Pacers and Pistons.
Oh my god,
that was crazy. I remember watching that like as it happened live, and it was.
I remember watching it live too. It was a weeknight primetime NBA game,
so,
and it was. Yep. And dude.
It was like 9/11, the aftermath of it. So for anyone who doesn't know, so the Pacers and Pistons played each other. I think it was 2004 because I was.
Sounds right. Yes.
Yeah, and I think it was a freshman in high school, and they had like history. I think they had gone back and forth. Reggie Miller was like right at the end of his career. The Pistons had like Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, Rip Hamilton. It was two good teams. I think the Pacers were like loaded last year. They should have won.
They might have played each other in the playoffs the year before. Or something like that.
The Pistons should have, or the Pacers should have won. Pistons beat them, end up winning the championship. So there's already some bad blood, and I think it was like not necessarily a blowout, but the Pacers were going to win relatively handily, at like by like 10.
The game was winding down
over, and Ben Wallace goes up for a layup. Ron Artest comes in with like a relatively hard foul, and then there's a scuffle there, like a regular basketball fight.
That's fine.
And as tempers are flaring, Ron Artest goes to the scorer's table and kind of kicks back, and he's like, Ron Artest, he's being cocky. He's like, pretending to yawn or whatever.
Right.
Things seem to be dying down, and then a fan throws a like cup of beer or something at Ron Artest on the table, hits him right square in the chest, and you see like the look of like just pure rage in his eyes. He goes up 5 rows deep into the stands.
That's the moment where history was made. He took one step into that stands.
Yep. Craziness. And then Jermaine or
Steven
Jackson.
But right here though, a grown man, NBA player in his jersey after a game is in the stands fist fighting a fan. A fan. That has never happened in sports.
And then Steven Jackson goes up. I remember Reggie Miller wasn't playing, but he's like trying to hold people back. And there's just a melee. There's just absolute madness. And my favorite part about this was the announcers were like, they were like on the verge of tears. People were treating it as though it was like 9/11, a national tragedy.
I think the reaction was appropriate.
Yeah, I think so too. But it was so outrageous. Did you know, before I keep going, in like the 70s, the Boston Bruins, the hockey team, did the same thing?
Really?
They climbed over the glass with their skates and full
That's
gear
hard
on.
to do.
Chase down these guys in the stands. And this guy, Mike Milbury, who's still like NBC's like one of their golden boys as it comes to breaking down hockey, take a guy's shoe off and start beating him over the head with it.
I didn't know
3 or 4 Bruins in the stands with skates on. Like, that's dangerous. And I'm pretty sure they just like finished the game. Ron Artest, Steven Jackson, they were suspended for a full year. This has been like a smudge on the NBA's record forever. But it was so outrageous. And then, do you remember that guy that looked like Turtle in the Pistons?
Yes, I was just going to say that.
That was amazing.
I saw Turtle. Up. Jerry Ferreira is his real name, Turtle from Entourage. I saw on Twitter because it was just the anniversary of it, And he's like, this is my yearly reminder that this wasn't me.
This wasn't that me. It looked just like him.
It looked just like him.
But good for that guy. He like squared. He's a little meatball. He squares up and he just
squares up.
Yeah, and somehow he eats a punch from.
Was that against Steven Jackson?
I think so.
Or Jermaine O'Neal, one of these two. Either way, this is a 6'5" NBA strong athlete who is. They stretched. Like they were warmed up. Like these guys in the stands drinking beer, like with their jeans on and their belt hanging a little low. Like they were just kind of like.
And it's funny to see what happens
imagine
when
that,
like.
Dude.
It's funny to see what happens when like the wheels fall off and things get out of control because like fans were storming onto the court and just like watching. I think some fans probably
so
just
much beer
everywhere.
It was like raining.
And then I remember they like Reggie Miller and some coaches I think were like shuttling Ron Artest to the locker room through the tunnel, and there was just like beer and popcorn, everything getting thrown at him. I mean, it was outrageous.
Dude, that was insane.
And that's when I think Ron Artest, because Ron Artest had already done some crazy shit before. But that was, I think, when he like cemented himself, was like, this guy is an absolute wild card.
Yeah. I also think that's when a lot of stadiums stopped selling beer around the third or fourth quarter.
Oh, really? That would make sense.
Yeah. I always, last time I went to a live sporting event, it's been a while. I remember getting pissed, like, can't get a beer? Like, and I think a lot of rules changed around then because, I mean, everyone was probably wasted. And I think they definitely that arena, I think they stopped selling it around halftime or early third quarter.
I don't know if we said, but it was in Detroit. Another crazy thing is like Rasheed Wallace, like didn't get involved. You know, like some tough dudes. Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, they both just kind of stood. But I think Rasheed Wallace is that Philly guy, so shout out him for letting cooler heads prevail. But it was and like Larry Brown. It's also funny seeing the coaches. I think it was who was the Pacers coach?
Larry
George
Brown was
Carlisle,
the coach.
Maybe I think it was George Carlisle.
Carlisle?
I think so. I could be wrong. But it was, and Larry Brown was, and it was just, it was wild. So that was a great fight.
That was amazing, dude. That's up there. I didn't think of that one. That's an epic moment in history. Like transcends sports. Just fighting the fans. Oh my God, dude. Crazy.
That was before social media. Imagine if Twitter existed then.
Dude.
How much fun it would be, like all the fan video. Oh, it'd be awesome.
That's a good one.
So, thanks.
All right. My second one. I'm starting to get a little reputation here of taking some liberties with these, right?
Okay.
But my second one is the fight that I'm referring to is World War II. Obviously, I love World War II. I'm a history buff with it, but I'm not. Here's my thing from World War II. So the fight's World War II. The story is, all right, so there's an 1,100-man unit called the 23rd Headquarters Special Troops, and they were known as the Ghost Army. Do you know about the Ghost Army?
No.
Okay, so the Ghost Army, American, Canadians, British, special tactical deception unit, and they were made up of people from art school, actors, advertising agencies, and other creative fields. And they had one specific mission. And what they did was they were a tactical deceptive unit. So what they had in there, they didn't have guns. They didn't have bombs. They had inflatable tanks, fake radio sounds, and they set up a stage. So they had inflatable tanks, inflatable planes, and they recorded the sounds from the actual troops, and then they played it. So the point was so this was in Europe after D-Day when the Allies were kind of like closing in on Germany. And when there were battles, the Germans would fly their planes over and they would scope out where camp was set up. And then they would plan accordingly. So Patton, who was the general, he started this unit. And what they did, they made fake camps so that to deceptively make the Germans think that they were in one area, but really they were in another area. So the planes would fly over and they would be like, okay, we know where they are. We know where they're coming from. But really it was just inflatable tanks, inflatable planes, fake runways, and fake sound. And if this unit ever would have gotten to war, they would be dead. It would be a bunch of art school guys and actors. But it was all fake stuff. So they had fake bases. And I just think that's the coolest thing. And they go. What's your comment?
I'd never heard about this. I know, like for D-Day, they had like intentionally had plans intercepted that they were going to
post D-Day.
Right, but it's like kind of a similar. It's like trickery and deception and
deception, right?
Like
it's taking it to the next level. Yeah, D-Day. The whole thing was they waited a year, and they kind of send signals. And the Germans did not know when or what beachfront they were going to attack on. And Hitler tried to put up like guns all across the beaches of France, but like you had to start somewhere. So there was deception involved there, but this took the deception to the next level. So they staged more than 20 different battlefield deceptions. And they often operating close to the front lines. Rubber airplanes, elaborate costumes, radio codes, speakers that blared pre-recorded soundtracks into the forests of France. And nobody was allowed to talk about this. And no one spoke publicly about this until a museum released the story of this in 1985. 1985. So nobody knew about this till 1985. And they're known as the Ghost Army. And they were an 1,100 person unit. And all they did was sit around with fake airplanes, fake tanks, fake runways, fake sound. And they did it to trick the Germans. And I always thought that was the coolest thing. It worked. Yeah, it worked. I was trying to look for like what battle it made the biggest difference in. I couldn't find like one moment that
you can point to.
Was like I could point to, but it was over 20 different deceptions where they took it down, they set it up, and then the German planes flew over, and then it was like strategic, like so the Germans would kind of position themselves here, thinking they're coming from here,
so they could take
right. And then if you have 50,000 troops versus 50,000 troops, that's going to be a fight. But if you can make it 50,000 troops versus 10, 10, and 30, and then it's 50,000 versus 30,000, and you got them to move 20,000 troops because they thought that you were coming from this direction, so they positioned them differently, and then you hit them, and then it gives you that advantage of 20,000 troops. And it was all art students, actors, people from advertising agencies, and it helped us win. It helped us win the war.
And I'm sure it you start second guessing everything. If so like even when you're on the right track or you're actually on the scent of the Allied forces, it's like, oh my God, now
I don't think the Germans ever knew. So they never, and nobody knew until 1985, which is another part of the story that is fascinating. I don't know why they couldn't talk about it.
Right.
Maybe because maybe they didn't want to give it away for any future wars.
Right.
But then around 1985, I guess like nukes, and after the Cold War, and after all right, we can talk about it now. But all the 1,100 members kept a pact not to say anything, not to release it to the public, and so I love World War II. I am obsessed with it and know a lot about the tactics and the timing. But that story,
that's a crazy one,
is wild, and I love it.
I'd never heard of that. That is wild. I love hearing about how. War is crazy. World War II changed a lot for many reasons, but hearing the mental warfare and outsmarting people, and that's awesome.
Yeah, there's a lot of stories about intercepting codes, Morse code, and then if someone intercepts your code, there was a lot of that in the Pacific with the boats. That was they played it against each other, and But yeah, it's a big. And then with the intelligence and the interceptions and the codes becomes a lot of allegiance issues, like a spy within a spy within a spy. That
double agent,
double agent. So that part of the war is fascinating.
That's crazy.
So the Ghost Army, the Ghost Army,
Ghost Army. That's a badass name too.
Yeah,
that's awesome. All right, well, you learned something new. I don't have one that I think I'm gonna school you on, but I like that one a lot. All right, so for my number 2, I'm going to say Jay Leno versus first David Letterman and then Conan O'Brien, because he kind of screwed over both, but obviously more so Conan.
It's a good one.
So when Johnny Carson was nearing retirement, David Letterman was his heir apparent. He was the late show after, the late show after the Tonight Show.
This is Johnny Carson,
right?
You said.
Right. Okay. Johnny Carson was nearing retirement. David Letterman was the heir apparent. He was supposed to take over. He had the time slot right after him.
This is all NBC, right?
Right, at that point. Okay. And then, did you watch David Letterman much?
Not really. Top 10.
So he's like just, I guess, comparatively speaking, like edgier. He's so funny. Comedians love him, but he's a little bit darker, a little bit edgier. And the powers who be decided that he was a little bit too like harsh for that show. Okay. So Jay Leno swooped in and took it, right? And that kind of created their feud. And
I think Letterman went to CBS then.
He did. Yep. Okay. And most people, I think, this is my own bias. David Letterman had an awesome show. Jay Leno was kind of a fraud and like not very funny. Like comedians will always consider getting on Carson or David Letterman, like kind of their big break. That's when they made it. So then Jay Leno had the Tonight Show. Conan O'Brien had the time slot after him, right? He was the heir apparent to take over for Jay Leno when he was going to retire. So they had it. I don't remember they went back and forth between when he was going to retire, but eventually he did. And Conan O'Brien took over and had the Tonight Show for like 2-3 months. And then Jay Leno said, you know what? Never mind. I changed my mind. I'm coming back. And just straight up cucked him, took his show back and left Conan with his wiener in his hand. He had nothing to do. Yeah. And it was just such a scumbag move. And like Conan O'Brien was just the innocent victim here. And I also read that when he took over for him, he had great numbers, and then they took away his lead-in, meaning the show that leads into it. And he had like a great lead-in for a while. And then once Jay Leno wanted to maybe return, they were like, all right, let's change the show that leads into the Tonight Show so that the ratings drop off. That's like a big deal. Your lead-in is a big deal.
Right.
So then they had some numbers to point to, oh, well, you weren't doing so well. So then Jay Leno just came back and said, screw it. I'm taking my show back. Conan O'Brien had to go to TBS.
That was a huge
we all know what happened
deal.
from there.
That was a huge deal.
I didn't know that. I didn't know that's why he had to go to TBS.
By the way, when you say we know what happened from there, what do you mean?
Like he went to TBS. There's Tonight shows. I don't think I love Conan O'Brien. I don't think that anyone's going to say that his show is like going to compete with the other ones because they're on network television. He's on like a cable channel. You know what I mean? And now he went from an hour show to 30 minutes, and now he's stopping his show. He's going to do like a sketch comedy thing.
Dude, I love out of all those people, Conan's my favorite.
Yeah, I love Letterman, but Conan's great too.
So when I never watched talk shows like at night. Now I like watching them on YouTube. I've been on a huge Conan kick lately because YouTube keeps feeding you the things that you're watching.
Yeah.
One of the things I love that Conan does, I never ever watch talk shows when the guest talks interviews boring. I like the first little bit. Jimmy Fallon does like little jokes and comedy.
Monologues.
Conan does like bits, and they're fucking funny, dude. Like
his like pre-recorded.
No, not pre-recorded with a live audience. Conan has this thing called the Audiency Awards, and he does he makes fun of audience members who look like certain people, and then he went through this stage, like I think it was like 2010, 2014, where he would use his writers and he would stage them in the audience.
Yeah,
and he would always do bits with like the audience was someone in the audience was staged, and they would do jokes about that. And dude, it's the best. It's like a sketch comedy, but it's a talk show, so that's part of the joke.
And that's what he's doing now. That's his new show is going to be. He also has, I think, the best like pre-recorded like bits that he does. Where he does like off studio where Andy will do like a barbecue. With the Clueless Gamers, or he did the one like where he was on Tinder with Dave Franco. I don't know if you saw that one.
Yeah,
he does. He's really funny, and I think
he's the best bits.
He does, and he was like a super respected writer. He wrote for The Simpsons. He's like
writer, right?
Kind of like a comedian's comedian, similar to like a John Mulaney, who was recently in the news. But he was like behind the scenes of SNL, Tina Fey. Like these people were all like very respected in the writing world. And he was like a good dude. Everyone was happy for him to take over, and Jay Leno just couldn't let it go. He's like kind of eating crow a little bit, but from everything that I've read, Jay Leno's just a dickhead. Him and David Letterman didn't get along because he's kind of a phony, from what I understand. Conan, like, you imagine Conan O'Brien getting angry. You can't really like imagine, right?
Like, he's a nice guy. He's funny, like witty, like nice mannered, and like he was put in such an awkward situation.
And so I think eventually they didn't hold back. They were like, I saw an interview with him and Andy Richter, and they're like, kind of tiptoeing around the question, do you hold any ill will towards like anybody at NBC? And they were just like, yeah. Just like matter of fact, of course.
And he still had the show he still had that awkward period where he had the show before a little bit. I remember Norm Macdonald came out and he's like, I got you a gift basket, and he's like, it's a It's actually from 6 months ago. I meant to give it to you, and it says, "Dear Conan, congratulations on the new job. No one can ever take this away from you. I'm sure this won't end in terrible, terrible failure." It's like, sorry, it's from 6 months ago. Like he did a lot of jokes about that, but that's a good one, man. That was a big deal.
Yeah,
I feel like that would be less of a big deal now because I feel like people don't consume the late night shows in the same way. I only watch them like the next day or the next morning or like a bit later on YouTube.
Right. It was just such a like classless move. You know what I mean? It's like done with so little tact. If it was in your
didn't they give
mind
Conan,
that
they gave Conan back his slot after, but he was just like, fuck that, right?
Did they? Because I think they had already replaced it.
I don't know.
With Jimmy Fallon.
Okay, so they just put
That's
him in
what I was asking.
where
Where does like Seth Meyers and Jimmy Fallon fall in?
Well, this would be like if Jimmy Fallon said, "I'm going to retired," and then they gave Seth Meyers a show, and then after 3 months said, "Nah, never mind." And Seth Meyers was like, "Well, now what? Because you gave away my time slot." It was messy, and I don't know if the Jimmy Fallon timeline matches up, but I would imagine it did because they wouldn't have a vacant slot after him. They had to fill that show.
Right. So that would have taken away that person's job.
Right. And apparently, from what I've been reading, Jimmy Fallon's like tenure a little bit up in the air right now because his ratings are awful. It's crazy because he was by far top of the top, couldn't be touched, and then people started getting tired of like his phoniness and his shtick. I don't know, but yeah, crazy. I thought it was a good fight.
That is a good fight. That's a good one. I wouldn't have thought of that. All right, my next one is one everyone knows. But it's a classic. Biggie versus Tupac.
Of course.
Biggie versus Tupac. In 1994. Well, they were friends. And then they were hanging out in 1994. Tupac got shot in the lobby and thought that Biggie had something to do with it. Biggie was like, if you ever seen the movie, the like Hollywood movie they made about Biggie, they really made Tupac look bad. And Biggie just be like, I didn't do anything. And he never, they were friends. This shot got fired at him. He thought it was Biggie. And I don't think it was. I don't know. But then he joined like Death Row Records, which kind of started this East Coast, West Coast rivalry. And that's when it really went off. And then there was never proof that Biggie knew about that incident. A couple months later, though, he did put out the song "Who Shot Ya?" And that was like kind of going into it a little bit. And my favorite line from it, and so then Tupac claimed that he slept with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans. Yeah. My favorite line is, "I fucked your bitch, you fat motherfucker."
Like, that's not even. It's like before the song even starts.
Yeah. And that's like when I was like thinking if I should do this, I was thinking about that line. I was like, all right, I'm gonna go with it. "I fucked your bitch, you fat motherfucker." And like I just love that line. And then so September 7th, 96, Tupac was shot in Las Vegas. 60 days later, exactly 60 days later, in Los Angeles, Biggie got shot, and neither murder has been solved. They're both cold cases. They're both unsolved murders. People have no idea if it was fans or groupies or close members. But damn, like, I like beefs. Beefs are cool, especially in the rap world. And just less, it's a little
not
more,
when it ends like this, unfortunately.
Yeah, like it's like more sad when it ends in murder.
I think people like took a step back, like, ooh, all right, like let's agree to not kill each other, right? But we can have beef and like sell records, but
right, because it sells records. It's cool to have rivalries. I mean, we like sports. One of the fun parts about it is the Cowboys versus the Eagles and like rivalries. Like, of course, people like that stuff, and it helps sell. It helps people talk about it. It helps have people get into a side that's innocent. But like when it comes down to murder,
but if Troy Aikman killed Randall Cunningham, it'd be like, whoa,
Troy,
like,
yo,
come on, man, like, keep it on the field.
It was as big as if like Kanye and Taylor Swift shot and killed each other. Like that's how big of stars that were.
Again, there's no proof that they like did it to each other like on purpose.
Right.
But they were friends at first. And
Eminem
Biggie
recently put out like a couple years ago. He's like, the day I do that is the same day Puffy admits he like put out the hit that got Pac killed. Did you hear that?
Yep.
It's like I think it's
later he's like, sorry, Puff.
Yeah,
he says that like later at the end of the song.
That's what everyone assumes, but like you said, nobody really knows. But that was like rappers were like
more gangster,
really actually badass. And then there was a period of time where like rappers talked about it like they were, and like it was the middling period where they weren't killing people, but they were like selling drugs. And now it's like whatever. It's just a bunch of
Lil Wayne's like a
bullcrap.
pop star, yeah. But
Right.
there's other good rap beefs. I don't know a lot about Jay-Z versus Nas, but that was a big one.
That was a good. They were like, so Nas was like kind of like a mentor almost to Jay-Z. They were like boys, and then Jay-Z put out the song called "The Takeover," and the second verse he just like rips Nas apart for no reason, and then Nas put out "Ether," which is a song that starts "Dum dum 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 fuck Jay-Z."
Yeah.
No, you ain't talking shit, man. You, and it's just like he absolutely obliterated him, and it was like I think Nas was surprised and like hurt that who we thought his boy was.
Jay-Z did that to
Clout,
start conversation because. So one of my favorite other ones is MGK and Eminem. I was like into that one because I love Eminem, and I always knew about MGK, but MGK is one of my favorite rappers now. He's fucking good, and I learned really about him from. I think he won the Eminem versus MGK rap battles.
Yeah, I think I would agree.
MGK came out with one song, and Eminem came out with like 4. And
well, he had the one, the Kill Shot or whatever. But the thing about that, like, so I agree that no, Rap Devil was the best one. Oh, you're saying Kill Shot was Eminem's best song.
Eminem's best one.
Sure. The thing about it, because I think the Rap Devil MGK's diss was like the best one,
but
he also we know so much about Eminem because his music is so good that he like tells all these stories. We don't know shit about MGK because he's like
less material to come at him with.
I don't think he's a good rapper. I like his most recent album. It's like
Bloody Valentine, dude. I love that song. You like
the
that
song?
Nostalgic thing.
Forget You Too. With Halsey, amazing song.
It's cool that he was a rapper.
I think he's a shitty rapper.
Punk rock. I think he's a great rapper.
He's always had that because I remember I saw an interview with him years ago. With he was like talking about Anti-Flag and a couple of punk bands that I used to listen to back then. I was like, all right, this guy. But I mean, Eminem, like Eminem's diss track had a few lines that are just like
so weak.
Like, all right, like pop a bottle, celebrate it because it's as big as you're ever gonna get, and like that is true. Like it was a smart move on his part, but like this is it. Enjoy your moment.
Had some
because
real weak lines though. I remember the one line was,
of course,
like
how you gonna name yourself after a pop or after a damn gun and have a man bun.
That was actually funny. That was funny. But the one line was like, "You dissed me. It was my 3rd album. It was really my 4th album, idiot." And I was like, "Dude,
you goof." You called him a goof.
Yeah.
But like again, you don't know anything about MGK. Like Eminem, say what you will about Eminem now, but his old music was so good. Like he had his first Eminem's 2-3 albums.
Dude, Eminem's just came out with some new music and it's pretty good.
Yeah.
One of my lines that sticks out to me from that beef was a visual persuasion, and MGK's like, "I'm 6'4" and you 5'9", and I'm just imagining like them bodying up against each other and how much bigger MGK is.
But then Eminem's like, let's be real for a minute. You'd suck a dick to be me for a second, which is true, you know.
But it was good. They were good.
It was fun.
Good songs, good raps. And the one other one,
Drake
and Pusha T. And
that was amazing.
The storyline from that is Pusha T tells the world that Drake has an illegitimate son.
Fucked up. Like,
dude, Pusha T's the truth. I love Pusha T.
I mean, it's fucked up for sure. But if you're battling, and looking for material, that's great material.
The story goes Drake and Pusha T was in the studio with Kanye, and like Kanye told like they used the information against him. Like they were just friends like 3 days ago. It's kind of fucked up.
Yeah, well, Drake came at, fuck with the bull, you get the horns. I was fine with that. I think I mentioned it on one of these podcasts. I'm not a huge Drake fan. I think he's more like R&B, and I don't think he's a great rapper. Pusha T is a great rapper. Like even Clips back in the day. So I've been on Pusha T side for a while, but
Kanye is on Pusha T side.
Amazing. He also who's that weird guy? Not weird guy. He's like sick. He's like Drake's boy. I forget what his name is, but he's always with Drake.
Made fun of
40.
him,
He made fun of him. Is that his name? Yeah. He's basically like what I forget what he said, but he made fun of him for he's gonna die soon or something.
Yeah.
But like Pusha T, he's like a real gangster too. He used to sell and.
I like the part of the story.
I loved it.
I like the part of the story. Apparently, Lift Yourself. Poopity Scoop. The Poopity Scoop song. That beat is fucking hot.
Drake thought he was going to be on that.
No, Drake wanted the beat, and Kanye was supposed to sell it to him, didn't. And then he released it as like a joke
just
track.
Like
And dude, that beat is incredible. Like someone needs to like remix that. But I like that part of the story too. And then Drake came back. I crept down the street, took a left, and he's talking about like because he lives in the same. They live in the same neighborhood. He's basically implying that he like fucked Kim. And he's like checks over stripes. He's talking about like Adidas or Nike over Adidas. So that's a good one too. That's a good one.
Drake has one of the best flows. I ain't gonna lie.
Dude, I mean, I think Drake's an amazing rapper. He does do too much R&B, I think. But like,
he also doesn't write
the appeal to.
He doesn't like write all his music.
No, you can tell. You can tell. Those
care
lines
about
are too good. They're too good for him to come.
You don't care that he has ghostwriters? What do you mean?
Like, if I had to go back to all the songs I ever liked and picked.
He's able
what
to
parts who
deliver
wrote
it,
who.
That's
I'm
what
not
makes
worried
him
about
special.
it.
I mean, if you practice,
he's still doing it.
I disagree.
I mean, all the actors, people write actors' lines. It's still about delivery.
So you don't. I mean, that seems like a crazy take that you don't care if a rapper is writing their music or not. If somebody's writing it for them and they just deliver it, they're doing karaoke versus somebody who actually.
I mean, it's not karaoke because they're still there's still the flow and the word and like the timing.
But somebody's writing it, like somebody's writing the flow for them.
I mean, don't you think that?
Yeah.
I mean, don't you think the good comparison would be all actors' lines are written by writers?
No, because you have to like be on camera and like show emotion and like actually, it's not. No, it's not the same as acting. It's like saying that an actor is as good a writer as a writer is.
But also,
you know
we
what I
don't
mean?
know what the truth is about the ghostwriting situation.
Sure, that's true.
So,
he came up with all those songs. He's like literally the greatest.
Like Nas wrote the song "Getting Jiggy with It." Like that is clear. You can listen to the song and be like, "Oh, this is a Nas song."
That's kind of part of the industry. That's kind of part of the industry as far as like people share beats and stuff like that.
But you would hope that like the real ones are writing their own lyrics. Whatever. It's just a personal thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean that's a great.
Biggie versus Tupac. That's my fight number 3. And rap beefs are cool. I support more celebrity beefs.
Yeah, I love it. All right, cool. So I have a couple here, but I'll go with "'Tis the Season." I'll go with Rudolph versus all the other reindeers. Because obviously there's a rivalry there. If you think about it, like all these other dickheads are just bullying Rudolph because he looks different, and then all of a sudden they need him, and like he comes in and saves the day, and we're expected to believe that all is hunky dory, and like now everyone loves him, and he's included, and nobody's calling him names, and he can play games with everyone. But we know that that's like going to be the most awkward. Like the day after Christmas is going to be the most awkward thing ever.
Yeah,
Rudolph's going to be like, "What the hell, guys? Hey, Blitzen."
Yeah,
they would let him. They called him names.
None of the other
all of the other reindeer used to laugh and call him names. They never like, poor Rudolph. Do you want to the reindeer games?
Right.
He's like, oh, what?
Yeah,
now
they're just bullying him because he has a physical handicap.
Yep.
They're basically like making fun of him because he's deformed.
And look, where's Santa in this? I guess maybe this is happening outside, or is he just enabling all this bullying? And then again, once they need him, everyone like is like, "Oh, you're the best, Rudolph." Don't you think he'd be a little bit bitter about that afterwards?
Yeah, like
hey,
and like, also,
hey, Vixen, what the fuck, dude? Like you've been a dickhead to me my entire life, and now you need me, and guess who's leading the way? You know he's probably like going hard.
And the story of timing is always confusing when it comes to Christmas, but. What was this? The first foggy Christmas ever?
Right, right. It's always foggy on Christmas. You know?
Yeah, like it's always nighttime. Like you always could use a light.
Right.
Geez,
and don't you think like wouldn't he need
all the magic Santa has?
I guess maybe Santa's the one leading the way, but like I don't know. It seems like a lot to put on his shoulders after being bullied and probably having like some self-esteem issues, and that's like all of a sudden you're the man. But
lead us if you don't take us to all the houses in the world in one night, like we can't see back here. We can't see. So like
also,
you gotta be the hero.
Have you ever like turned on a light in fog? Have you ever put on your like headlights in fog? It doesn't really help much. It just like makes it foggier.
Yeah.
So like Rudolph, if anything, he's just being like, "Oh, dude, now everyone's gonna see us." Like that's the one thing that we have to be secret and silent. But whatever, he gets the job, and now once he gets the job, everyone starts sucking up to him. I think it's a bunch of phonies, frauds. Dasher, Prancer, Dancer, Vixen,
they're
Donner,
dicks.
Cupid.
They're like dick frat brothers. Like
Comet and Blitzen.
Was Rudolph like younger?
He had a red nose.
Dude, honestly, I swear to God, going back to the Santa thing, like another thing that always flustered me a little bit was all the Christmas movies. They all have a different like take on what Santa is, what the reindeer are, how important Frosty is, the heat miser. You Without Santa Claus, one of my favorite movies, and I saw like a picture of Trump as the heat miser and Joe Biden as the It's like a perfect comparison. I forget the guy, Heat Miser and
Mr. Frost,
Mr. Snow. I don't know, but all the Christmas movies and all their portrayal of Santa all has a different elf structure, timeline, and that always like annoyed me as a kid, actually. And yeah, but that's a good one. And damn, those reindeer are dicks.
Yeah,
and we just sing along about this song every Christmas about bullying.
Right. Unbelievable. And again, Santa is not blameless here. There has to have been signs that this guy was getting picked on. And like when I think of this, I think of like, Bambi almost. Rudolph like can barely stand up. He's all frail, and everyone's like spitting on him and being the dick to him. And then all of a sudden, we need you, and he comes to save the day, and he doesn't hold any animosity. I'm not buying it. There's got to be more to it. There's some in drama and infighting there.
Right.
I'd like to know more, but that's it.
Hopefully, the next generation of reindeer that have disformities, Rudolph will be accepting of them.
Yep.
What was on your honorable mentions?
Dogs versus cats, or cats versus mice. Kanye versus Taylor Swift, or Kim versus Taylor Swift.
Okay.
I had Tyson and Holyfield. 50 Cent versus Floyd Mayweather. Where 50 Cent's like, dude, I think 50 Cent said I'll give you $50 million, or I'll give you $1 million if you read me a book, read a page of a book, because Floyd Mayweather can't read. He's just like amazing at talking shit. And that was really
that's a good one.
What about you?
Any pop to your head, Brandon? I didn't have any honorable mentions, honestly. So I'm glad you didn't take any of mine.
Y'all did really well on that though. So
thank you.
Fights, baby.
Good one.
Boom.
Big fights.
Big fights, big bites.
Question 3.
Have you ever heard a better podcast in your entire life? Take that, Joe Rogan. Best podcast you've ever heard. Get more podcasts right here, and subscribe to the show too while you're at it. Thanks for watching. I really appreciate you. Honestly, I love you.